It is My Nerd World, a Star Wars show. I am your host, Jon Justice, and I'm glad you are once again with another episode for a brand new year, 2022. Happy New Year to you as I completely go and choke as I start the episode this week. If you're watching the video version of the My Nerd World, a Star Wars show is back on YouTube. If you're watching the video version and you're looking at me going, dude, you look haggard, it's because I am. And I wish it was because I was up, celebrating last night for the new year. But I don't do that so much anymore. What I tried to do was get a good night's sleep. And what didn't happen last night was getting a good night's sleep. But I am here because I'm devoted to you and I'm devoted to Star Wars. And we got stuff to talk about this week. So I'm so glad that you're with the show. Again, it is brought to you by mynerdworld.net, where you can go and pick up the EMBARK Science Fiction Space Opera series. Written by yours truly. Hey, that's me. Yeah, I wrote those books. Go and check those out on mynerdworld.net. And also, Bourbon Pursuit, the Bourbon Pursuit podcast. Fantastic podcast. Even if you're not a fan of bourbon or whiskey, you need to go and check out Bourbon Pursuit. It's one of those little gems where I found it, and I'm not a bourbon or whiskey drinker. I might be now listening to this podcast, but the hosts are so good and so knowledgeable about what they talk about with everything with regard to bourbon that it just makes for a fantastic show. And that's what makes great podcasts. Even if you're not into the subject matter, it still is really compelling. And that's what makes Bourbon Pursuit so great. So go and check out Bourbon Pursuit. Again, one of the fine sponsors of My Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast. All right, so I want to get back into a bit more commentary of the Book of Boba Fett, Episode 1. If you missed it, there was a bonus podcast and show up on YouTube earlier this week after the debut on Wednesday. But now that I've had a chance to watch the episode again, I want to share some further thoughts about the Book of Boba Fett Episode 1, and we do have some listener feedback about that as well. So let's go ahead and get to it.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
So I don't want to say that I was too harsh after that first initial viewing. Most of what I said on Wednesday's bonus show still rings true in terms of some of the criticisms that I had of the episode. I will say, though, going back, and I was anticipating this, going back and watching it again, I enjoyed it much more a second time around and realized there were some things that I didn't mention the first time around that I should have brought up. They were just things that didn't stick out apart from watching it the first time around, but didn't kind of cement in my mind as I went into my commentary on Wednesday. I do think this was possibly, as I said earlier in the week, a longer episode that they cut into two to go ahead and give us more episodes. I certainly still feel that way. Although I will say that maybe there's another element to this that I missed the first time around. I've heard some other commentators talk about the jumps in the dream sequences and the flashbacks. And I guess they're flashbacks and not necessarily dreams. I think I was calling them dreams last time, but they're more flashbacks, right? And how this may be related to the title of the show being the Book of Boba Fett. I'll explain a little bit more later on, but a couple of things that I did want to mention that I didn't talk about earlier in the week were I did really enjoy, and I thought they did a good job, given the fact that this was a 38-minute episode, which really ended up being, like a 33-minute episode because there's 5 minutes of credits at the end. So it did feel very short. They did pack an awful lot in to this first episode, and specifically laying the groundwork and providing the opportunity for the casual fan who may have needed a refresher on where we stood in canon in the storytelling of Boba Fett. Specifically, the flashbacks to Geonosis and the flashbacks to Kamino. That was something that I didn't talk about earlier in the week that I really did enjoy. Apparently, all the footage from the Geonosis flashback was actually a repurposed shot of a younger Jango Fett holding Boba Fett's helmet after Mace Windu lopped his head off. From the original Attack of the Clones, except for there was an over the shoulder shot of Boba Fett looking at Jango's empty helmet. That was created specifically for the episode. But apparently, the Camino shots, I'm not so sure about. Those looked newer to me, although they could have been shots that were used in Attack of the Clones, or filmed for Attack of the Clones, or created, I should say, for Attack of the Clones, but simply never made it into production. I love Attack of the Clones, and I've talked about that extensively on the show in the past. So I know that movie very, very well, and that particular shot with the pan-in of the stormy water world looked completely different than anything that I had seen prior to since Attack of the Clones, right? So again, I liked it much better, getting some distance from it and realizing how much they packed into those 33 minutes, and definitely the prequel shots. I thought the prequel shots were absolutely fantastic. Now, one of the things that I kind of nitpicked about was how the show ended on a flashback, which I thought was really odd, and there wasn't necessarily a cliffhanger. And as I said earlier in the week, I think this could have been a single episode they lopped into two, and they needed to find a logical stopping point, and therefore we didn't really get the cliffhanger that you would have expected, or even a wholly rounded out story from a flashback standpoint. But what other people have mentioned and I hadn't really thought about, and specifically Christian Harloth on the Sith Council podcast, was perhaps these jumps and flashbacks will be happening throughout the series. This would explain why we ended on the flashback, and it also would kind of explain why this is being called the Book of Boba Fett. And there have been rumors that we could see Han Solo in the series. There were rumors that we could see some flashbacks to events that took place in the original trilogy. That type of storytelling could certainly play out in the way that they've done it so far just in episode 1. If we get this interesting sort of combination in each episode of the current story taking place on Tatooine in Mos Espa, of him taking over Jabba's palace and becoming the crime lord, coupled with these flashbacks that we get that flesh out Boba Fett as a character, where we find out more about what he experienced prior to the events that put him in the Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi. That would certainly make a lot more sense as it relates to calling it the Book of Boba Fett. And I'm kind of down with that. But again, I'm going to go back to the fact that if they are going to do that, then I really do kind of hope that they'll make longer episodes. Because I wouldn't mind seeing that. I wouldn't mind seeing some of those events from, say, The Empire Strikes Back, or even things that took place in the original trilogy where we didn't see him. Like, it would be really cool. I'm just kind of riffing here, but it would be really cool to see a flashback that relates to the expanded edition scene that was added back in A New Hope, or that was, created for A New Hope, in which Boba Fett shows up at Docking Bay 94 and looks at the camera and walks away. It would be really cool if they were to give us a little bit more of what happened in that moment and why he was there in the first place. And, the creative talent over at Lucasfilm has already shown that they're more than willing to go back to the past and pull from sort of obscurity. There was a trailer that was released where it showed a couple that were engaged in this building, which we assume is Tatooine, and a lot of people were pointing out that this looks like a couple of characters that were at Tashi Station from A New Hope that were cut from the final version of A New Hope. So there was a scene where Luke Skywalker we actually see Luke go to Tashi Station. And it's Cammy and another character's name, and I can't remember their name right now. Bad Star Wars show host. But there was another character, a male character that were there in this cut scene. And we've seen a scene that looks exactly like Tashi Station from the deleted scene from A New Hope. And two characters that are dressed just like Luke's friends. So the speculation is that perhaps even in the next episode, we're going to see Fennec Shand and Boba Fett go to Tashi Station to reclaim or to get Slave One, or that's where Slave One is. I've heard some people speculating about that. That's another complaint that I have, by the way, just in that first episode, is that there was no stars in any of this. We didn't go to space at all. It's minor. I love my vehicles and I love my space battles, and so I would have liked to have seen that. So again, if that is what we're getting with the Book of Boba Fett, that is a pretty unique way to tell his story. However, Mandalorian kind of did that, because Mandalorian had that thread of Din Djarin's backstory as a kid about how he ended up with the Mandalorian in the first place. Now, that was a singular flashback that was stretched out through the episodes. So the concept of flashbacks for the Book of Boba Fett isn't like all that new. However, if this is going to happen in tandem with the story of him rising as a crime lord on Tatooine, then I'm certainly down with that. So again, I enjoyed it much more on a second watch, and after the second watch, it makes me anticipate next week's episode even more. So as always, love to hear from you. If you want to email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. talkshownerd@gmail.com, or like and subscribe on YouTube and leave a comment right there on the YouTube page.
This is not going to go the way you think.
All right, we got a couple of interesting items here. First off comes a production sheet for Star Wars The Acolyte. The working title is Paradox. Not much new here. I believe that we've heard these details about this upcoming live-action show before, but they do give a bit of a couple of lines about the plot for The Acolyte. And this is a show that I'm very much looking forward to. I don't know anything about it. We know that the actress from she played Rue. She was really young. She played Rue in the Hunger Games. And she's been in several movies since then. So we know that she's potentially been hired to play the Acolyte. And this show is one that I look forward to simply because of what we have heard. It just sounds very unique in that it seems to be focused more on the dark side. It's supposed to take place, as the little synopsis here says, in the final days of the High Republic era. We've heard of acolytes before in the Aftermath trilogy that came out after Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm. Kind of replaces the Timothy Zahn novels post Return of the Jedi. So here is what these production notes say. The Star Wars series is a female-driven action mystery thriller with martial arts elements that will take us into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era. And I just think the logo looks cool, if I'm being completely honest. This is a show that I'm very much looking forward to, and partly because it's kind of an open book right now, right? Amandala Stenberg was mentioned for the role of Aura. This was back in May and November. I believe that's who I was referring to before. No, but this is kind of it's kind of wide open. We don't know what it is. Like, we know what we're getting with Ahsoka. We don't know what we're getting with Lando, but we know the character, right? And we got a couple other things that we'll talk about here in just a moment. We know what we're getting with Andor. We know what we're getting with Obi-Wan Kenobi. We know what we're getting with Mandalorian Season 3. So, here we have this brand new product with brand new characters, and that gets me really excited. Plus, the opportunity to again, tap into the Force elements of the Star Wars universe that are kind of lacking, right? They have been lacking to a certain extent. We've got Grogu and his Force powers, obviously, and Ahsoka and Luke in The Mandalorian, which I thought did a really good job of bringing the mythology together and keeping the Force prominent. It doesn't sound like we're going to get a lot of that in the Book of Boba Fett, and that's completely understandable. But that's a part of a part of Star Wars that I genuinely love, that I hope we get to see more of, and it certainly sounds like that's going to be the case here with the Acolyte. Now, in the meantime, Fantha Tracks had a bit of a they had a report they put out earlier this week. I don't know why I'm trying to find fancy words to go and describe what it is I'm going to share with you. An unknown Star Wars project has been filming at Pinewood. 2022 promises to be quite the year for Star Wars, with the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, Ahsoka, The Acolyte, Mandalorian Season 3, Droid Tales, The Bad Batch Season 2, either airing or filming as we enter a new era of multi-project Star Wars TV. We already know that work continues at Lucasfilm Animation on Droid Tales and Bad Batch Season 2. The Book of Boba Fett has already aired Episode 1. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor have completed filming and are now in post-production, and that filming continues on The Mandalorian Season 3. But Fantatrax can exclusively reveal that another Star Wars project is already filming in the UK at Pinewood Studios, and it has since at least November. Existing rumors have suggested that The Acolyte would begin filming in February, although some say May of 2022, and that Ahsoka would film in March of 2022. Whilst it's thought that The Acolyte would film in the UK, most schools of thought believe that Ahsoka will film in Manhattan Beach. We're holding our hands straight up and telling you we don't know what this project is. What we do know is that the existing rumored production slate of Star Wars is incorrect. And so begs the question, what project is this? And they go through in great detail, and they look at past projects and the code names for past projects, and they look at the current production schedules of what's going on to try to deduce Fantatrax, to try to deduce what they think it is. And honestly, they just don't know. Is it The Acolyte? Is it Ahsoka? Is it Tales of the Jedi that we talked about last week that ended up being on that Christmas gift record player box from Lucasfilm with the logo that most people believe is animated? Is it the film that we're supposed to be getting in replace of Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron? Right? Now we're supposed to be getting a movie end of next year? End of 2023. 2023. I don't have the list in front of me. I get so confused. Right. So we were supposed to be getting Patty Jenkins' Star Wars Rogue Squadron at the end of 2023, because I believe we're getting Avatar at the end of this year. And me, along with, I think, Zach Weber from Knights of Vader, are the only ones that are genuinely excited for Avatar 2. And I could be wrong about that. So when that got shelved for now because of Patty Jenkins' schedule, there was a lot of talk that there would be another movie to take its place. How rad, definitely bringing rad back for 2022, how rad would it be if Lucasfilm and Disney were actually filming a movie right now in secret that would replace that? I think that would be incredible. I'm not holding my breath. That just sounds, more like fanboy stuff. That's not usually how any of these types of things work in the industry. But be that as it may, I would be really excited if that were to be the case, and I think it would be an interesting secret, an interesting way to put together a project, not tell anybody. Boy, I'm really just dancing around it. See, I told you I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. What I'm trying to say is when I would go to the movies, okay, let me back up here and really lay out what it is I'm trying to say. When I would go to the movies prior to the prequel era, and I would go see a 20th Century Fox film, I had this fantasy sitting in the theater when the 20th Century Fox logo came up and the fanfare would play, that how great would it be if the movie that I was here to see wasn't the movie that I was here to see at all, and it ended up being a Star Wars movie that had been secretly filmed, right? Flights of fancy, delusions of grandeur, that's all that was. But I think it would be really unique if Disney and Lucasfilm actually put together a production in complete and total secret and ended up filming a movie without anybody knowing, only to, release it and maybe announce it with a teaser that nobody was expecting. I think that would be cool. Jennifer Beals, who plays a Twi'lek that we saw in episode 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, apparently she didn't even know what show she was going to be on. She just knew that she was going to be a part of a Star Wars project, and it wasn't until she arrived to go film that she realized that it was the Book of Boba Fett. So while the productions for J.J. Abrams' Star Wars films, The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, were riddled with leaks, Disney and Lucasfilm have done a really good job of keeping everything sort of tight-lipped with their projects so far. So again, I'm not holding my breath that's going to be the case. I just thought it would be sort of really interesting if it was. As always, what do you think? TalkShowNerd at gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. All right, we got quite a bit of mail this week. Let's dive into some listener feedback here on the Star Wars Show.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All always one with a question. Friend of the show, Brian Martin, writes in and asks, is it true that some of the major creative decisions on The Rise of Skywalker were done in response to the reactions from angry fans on social media in regards to The Last Jedi? Because that's a very common thing that's brought up. The change from Rey being a nobody to a Palpatine, the mention of the Holdo maneuver being one in a million after people complained if it's so effective, why was it never done before? Kelly Marie Tran having much less screen time, all seem to be evidence of Tross catering to those complainers. Well, I don't know if they were major creative decisions. First off, I don't call those major creative decisions. I call those, those are just creative decisions. They're not anything that, Rey being a nobody to a Palpatine, I suppose you could land that in a major creative decision. Whether or not this was in response to angry fans, I have absolutely no idea. I don't believe that they are. I believe that they are just things that J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio decided on, along with the story group. And then comments like the Holdo maneuver, just basically adds a level and a connection to the previous film. I don't see those as being major creative decisions in response to angry fans. I just see that as storytelling. There were porgs, right? Because Rey went back to Octo, and there were porgs, and porgs were in the Last Jedi prominently. As far as Kelly Marie Tran having much less screen time, I'm going to bring this one up again, and I do this often. You don't hear anybody complain about the screen time of Yoda from episode 5, right, to episode 6, from Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi. The amount of screen time that Yoda had in The Empire Strikes Back and the amount of screen time that he had in Return of the Jedi was drastically reduced, and it mirrors the screen time of Kelly Marie Tran in The Last Jedi and Kelly Marie Tran in The Rise of Skywalker. That was a lot of individuals online that wanted more Kelly Marie Tran, but the decision was made there wasn't going to be, because J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio had another story to tell. And that's not, there's no Lando in A New Hope, right? And again, Yoda's the best example. He was in Empire Strikes Back way more than he was in Return of the Jedi, and nobody complained about that. Although the internet were around and we had Twitter and YouTube channels that make money off of being negative on Star Wars all the time, I'm sure there probably would have been. Brian Martin also says, why are many of the plot points and set pieces in the sequel trilogy just mirror variations of what already happened in the original trilogy? Did we really need to have, again, a piece of information important to the heroes hidden inside a droid during an attack from the bad guys on the third Death Star, a line of large four-legged walkers heading towards the Resistance and Rebel base on a white planet? Look, again, George Lucas said himself, right? He calls it poetry. It rhymes. And it's all subjective. You may see that as mirroring and potentially a negative, where I see that as more of what George Lucas said and how he saw it. It's like poetry. It rhymes. It was different, though, and there were changes. But there are plenty of nods throughout all of the films and going into the rest of the canon, whether it's Rebels or Clone Wars or Bad Batch or Mandalorian. Plenty of opportunities that have been taken to go and mirror events that have happened in other content. I just personally, I'll see it as a part of Star Wars. But as always, Brian, thank you so much for reaching out to the show this week. Miranda Alicia says this, friend of the show. To be perfectly honest with you, I was kind of expecting the very first episode of the Book of Boba Fett to feel a bit slow and kind of meh, but at the very least, it feels different. And I actually like that he isn't really truly a bad guy, and that he's kind of more of a gray character. He does want to rule, but he doesn't want to rule the same way that other leaders have had, with fear. Maybe we're being given a slow beginning because it could only mean that things can get better and more exciting later. That is my hope. She goes on to say, I've made a joke saying that Marvel has been paying Disney's bills all year long with the help of Grogu and all of his merch. He helps lend a hand turning in the check at the end of the month, or at least to try to make the deadline of due rent to Disney House while making his way to the bank because Marvel is busy popping out the next show and movie, LOL. I will say this, And she, by the way, Miranda had asked if I'd seen Spider-Man No Way Home, and I had, and I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic film. And I'm going to have to record a video at some point in time to share some of my commentary about where I think a lot of franchises are heading based off of what they did with the previous Spider-Man franchises and implementing them into No Way Home, and very much the same way they did with Ghostbusters Afterlife. I see this as a trend. Star Wars is definitely doing it. They did it in The Mandalorian, and they're doing it with the Book of Boba Fett already, and I see this as a trend that will continue of these intellectual properties, these IPs, reaching back and grabbing things that maybe weren't as successful as the current creative content, but now that they're attached to the more popular current creative content, they take on new life. I'll have to shoot a video on that sometime soon, because I really do think that's where we're heading with a lot of content coming up in the next year. All right, a friend of the show, Ben Fisher, writes, I just listened to your podcast, and you literally hit everything that I was thinking about after that episode. I felt I had to quickly write to you because I couldn't believe you hit everything that I'd noticed. I, too, looked at the runtime before my son and I watched it and was a little disappointed when I saw that it was at 38 minutes, and was disappointed right away knowing about 5 minutes or end credits. When the episode ended, I, too, looked right away to see if we were getting another episode, but realized we weren't. I, too, thought we were missing the cliffhanger, the catch that is going to make me not want to... the catch that is going to make me cannot wait for episode 2. I didn't get that. I'm going to watch episode 2, but I'm also missing that fear of missing out that I need episode 2 right now. You got that in The Mandalorian, mainly because we saw the child, and my mind was blown after seeing that. I agree. I didn't need all the backstory. He survived. Let's move on to the current story. But maybe you need this to understand how he's going to rule Tatooine, and I think that's the case too, and certainly it felt more that way watching the episode again. That he has a relationship and respect for all the people on the planet. I was confused for a little bit because they referenced the mayor, and I kept thinking it was Cobb Vanth, but he's the marshal. Obviously, that was my mistake, but I wonder if that confused other casual watchers right away. I'm curious who the mayor is. Some random points. After watching the monster moment, I wanted to play Mortal Kombat. I kept thinking of Goro. I also caught that those were Boston Dynamic robots. I was taken aback as well. I am curious what the symbol is on the houses that we saw. And look, there's rumors that, and I'll go ahead and give this out now, there's rumors that Crimson Dawn is going to be playing a major part of the Book of Boba Fett. So that could have been a Crimson Dawn logo that we're just not used to seeing. How many Gamorrean guards are there? The teaser that we saw at the end of the Mandalorian Season 2 showed them shooting Gamorrean guards when they enter the palace. I don't know. Hope you have a great new year, Ben Fisher. Yeah, I do too, Ben. It was off to a rocky start last night. Hope I get a better night's sleep tonight. But thank you, Ben, as always, for reaching out. All right, and a couple of quick ones here. The Lowdown Show writes, yeah, I thought the Book of Boba Fett was a little weaker than I wanted. Boba felt kind of weak. You know, it's interesting, too, because I was a little off in my commentary on Wednesday, which is not a huge surprise, in that we really did get a lot more backstory on Boba Fett than I even realized if you followed the Clone Wars, which I did. And going back to, Attack of the Clones and the establishment of Jango Fett and Boba at a very young age, how we saw him progress in the Clone Wars through several seasons. It does ring true with the character that we have come to know from the Clone Wars. And it makes sense with Dave Filoni being in charge of the Clone Wars, right along with George at the time. And the way that they ended up crafting Boba Fett, a lot of, I think, headcanon of individuals that perhaps didn't follow Clone Wars or maybe forgot about the arcs that Boba Fett played as a kid in those animated shows, really does lend itself to the Boba Fett that we're seeing now. And it also makes sense with the Boba Fett that we saw in The Mandalorian. They established pretty upfront that he's got a loyal streak to him. He may be a ruthless bounty hunter, but he was loyal to the Mandalorian in getting the child back because that was the deal that they made. So, again, it'll be interesting to see where we go from here and whether or not the next episode sort of leaves us with a little bit more and perhaps even a cliffhanger. And lastly, a little late on this one, but SheVP writes in and says, Merry Christmas, John. I hope you and your family have a blessed holiday. Thank you very much, SheVP. Happy New Year to you. I hope you also had a fantastic holiday. All right, and that wraps up the Star Wars show this week. Before I let you go, I want to invite you to go and check out mynerdworld.net or go to amazon.com and search for EMBARK, Jon, Jon Justice. There you can pick up my science fiction space opera series. 6 books out now. Book 7 is being written right now, which will complete the series thus far. You can pick up all 6 books right now in paperback, ebook, audiobook, and hardback. The only audiobook that's not available is for Book 6. I'm still working on that. And you can also pick up Book 1 if you're an ebook reader for EMBARK Book 1 for just 99 cents. All the other ebooks are $2.99. If you want to get the opening trilogy, which does tell a cohesive story, that would be EMBARK Book 1, The Vanishing War Book 2, Treasure in Darkness Book 2, and The Vanishing War Book 3. You can actually pick up all 3 of those ebooks in a trilogy ebook box set for just $3.99, which gives you a discount as opposed to buying them at $2.99 a piece and 99 cents. For those of you asking, what are these stories about? Well, I'm here to tell you. Katha dreamed of traveling beyond the known galaxy. Now humanity's survival will depend on it. A year after her beloved aerospace engineer father mysteriously passed away, headstrong pilot Katha Morrow discovers he left something behind for only her to find. Her excitement quickly turns to fear when she learns that an industrial accident inside a D-Corp civilian and military spacecraft factory has sparked an apocalyptic chain of events. While the ruthless Sin Argam attempts to exploit the global evacuation and gain control, Katha realizes the significance of what she's found and can't escape her destiny. As Earth's evacuees stand upon the brink of annihilation with the help of a ragtag squadron of pilots, Katha might be humanity's greatest and only hope against the tyranny of D-Corp's evil leader. Do not miss this fast-paced and action-packed space opera epic. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a link right there on the homepage to Amazon where you can go and pick up the books, and I hope you will go and do so to support my nerd world. That wraps up the show this week. Happy New Year to you. I pray that 2022 is better than 2021 and 2020. All right. Either way, thank you so much for checking the show out. We'll be back again next week. And until then, bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.